The 17-year-old girl stood motionless in the sterile laboratory corridor, her bare feet leaving wet prints on polished linoleum, as researchers in hazmat suits whispered frantically behind bulletproof glass. Within hours, every document bearing her name would be sealed in classified vaults, her existence officially erased from scientific records. This is the story of how one Appalachian teenager became the most dangerous discovery in modern genetic research. A secret so profound that the government classified her very identity to protect humanity from what she represented. Before we dive deeper into this buried chapter of American science, I want to know, where are you watching from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if stories like this fascinate you, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to hear has been locked away in classified files for over 3 decades. The Allegheny Mountains stretched endlessly beyond the chain-link fence of the Blackwood Research Facility, their ancient peaks shrouded in October mist that seemed to muffle even the sound of government helicopters circling overhead. Inside the compound, the air tasted of antiseptic and fear, while the constant hum of industrial ventilation systems vibrated through walls thick enough to contain nuclear secrets. Doctor, Sarah Mitchell pressed her palm against the observation window, watching technicians in full protective gear collect tissue samples from what appeared to be an ordinary teenage girl. The subject had arrived 3 days earlier, transported in a modified medical transport from the remote hollows of West Virginia. Local authorities had discovered her living alone in an abandoned mining cabin after reports of strange sickness plagued nearby communities. What they found defied every principle of human biology. The girl showed no signs of aging, despite documented evidence placing her birth in 1957. Her cellular structure regenerated at rates that should have been impossible. Most disturbing of all, her blood contained proteins that didn't exist in nature. Project Lazarus documentation, October 15, 1987. Subject exhibits complete cellular regeneration. Telomeres show no signs of degradation, despite chronological age of 30 years. Recommend immediate containment and classification. Level 5. Dr. Mitchell had spent 20 years studying human genetics, but nothing had prepared her for this. The girl's DNA contained sequences that predated known human evolution by millions of years, as if some ancient genetic code had suddenly reactivated. Government scientists theorized she might represent a spontaneous mutation, evolution's next leap forward. Others whispered darker possibilities, that she wasn't entirely human at all. The research team worked in rotating shifts, studying her blood, her skin, her very breath. Each test revealed new impossibilities. Her metabolism operated at 3 times normal human rates, yet she required no food. Her brain activity showed patterns unlike anything in medical literature. Most unsettling, her presence seemed to trigger physiological changes in others. Researchers reported improved healing, enhanced cognitive function, even partial reversal of age-related decline after extended exposure. But improvement came with a price. 3 technicians had suffered complete nervous system failures after direct contact with her skin. Their medical records, like everything else connected to the project, vanished into classified archives. The girl remained cooperative throughout, speaking in the soft Appalachian dialect of her mountain home, asking only when she could return to her cabin. She seemed unaware that the world outside now viewed her as either humanity's salvation or its greatest threat. The first breach of protocol occurred on October 19th. Dr. Mitchell entered the containment chamber without authorization, driven by scientific curiosity that overrode institutional caution. She found the girl sitting cross-legged on her cot, humming an ancient melody that seemed to resonate in her bones. When their eyes met, Mitchell experienced something beyond medical explanation. A moment of perfect clarity where the boundaries between observer and subject dissolved entirely. "What are you?" Mitchell whispered. The girl smiled, with eyes that held the weight of centuries. "Same as you, Doctor. Just remembering what we used to be." That night, security cameras captured Mitchell leaving the facility with a small vial of the girl's blood. By morning, both the doctor and her research subject had vanished without a trace. Emergency protocols activated across 3 states. Military units cordoned off a 50-mile radius around the facility. The official story blamed a chemical leak that required temporary evacuation. Science never forgave the truth. But here's what the classified reports don't reveal. In the weeks following their disappearance, satellite imagery detected unusual energy signatures throughout the Appalachian region. Geiger counters registered readings that didn't match any known radiation. Local hospitals reported a surge in miraculous recoveries from terminal illnesses. And deep in the mountain hollows, where coal fires had burned for decades, witnesses claimed to see lights that moved like living things through the darkness. The government deployed teams to investigate each anomaly, but they found only empty cabins and cold ashes. No signs of the girl or Dr. Mitchell. No evidence of the supernatural healing that locals described in whispered conversations. Just the mountains themselves, keeping their secrets like they had for millions of years. Standing sentinel over mysteries too dangerous for the outside world to understand. What would you do if you discovered that everything science taught about human potential was wrong? If you learned that some among us carried the genetic keys to transcendence itself? Would you report it to authorities? Or would you disappear into the mountains like those who came before? Because 35 years later, the search continues. And the questions have only grown more urgent as reports surface of similar anomalies appearing across Appalachia, each one erased from official records before the truth can spread. The coal miner's headlamp cut through absolute darkness as Tommy Briggs descended into the abandoned shaft, his boots echoing against wet stone while the stench of sulfur and decay filled his nostrils. 300 feet below ground, he would discover evidence that the girl wasn't the first anomaly these mountains had hidden from the world. What he found, carved into the tunnel walls, would force the government to admit they'd been tracking similar cases for over a century. The Blackwood Research Facility had been built on this exact location for reasons the public never learned, constructed directly above a network of mines that had produced more than coal since 1873. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the facility's head archivist, spent her days cataloging incidents that defied rational explanation. Her files contained reports dating back to the Civil War, each describing individuals who exhibited the same impossible traits as their current subject. Tommy had worked these tunnels for 15 years before the government condemned them, claiming unsafe methane levels. But methane didn't explain the strange symbols etched into bedrock, or the chambers that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. When the facility construction began in 1985, workers reported tools that repaired themselves overnight, and equipment readings that fluctuated without cause. Union representatives filed complaints about working conditions, but their grievances disappeared into bureaucratic black holes. The deeper Tommy ventured, the more apparent it became that someone had been using these tunnels recently. Fresh boot prints led toward a chamber that hadn't appeared on any mining survey. The walls here bore inscriptions in a script that predated Cherokee settlements, carved by hands that understood secrets the surface world had forgotten. At the chamber's center sat a natural formation that resembled an altar, its surface stained with what appeared to be dried blood. Above ground, Dr. Vasquez reviewed incident reports that painted a disturbing pattern. The 1873 Harlan County incident involved a young woman who survived a mine collapse that killed 37 men. Witnesses claimed she emerged from the rubble without injury, her skin glowing with an inner light that persisted for days. Military records from 1918 described a soldier from these mountains who survived mustard gas exposure that should have killed him instantly. His healing factor proved so extraordinary that Army physicians kept him under observation until he escaped during a thunderstorm. Appalachian anomaly documentation, Case File 77 Alpha. Subject exhibits regenerative capabilities beyond current medical understanding. Recommend transfer to secure facility for extended study. Note: subject claims heritage traces to pre-Columbian mountain dwellers. Each case followed the same trajectory: discovery, attempted study, then disappearance before any meaningful research could be completed. The subjects seemed to possess an instinctive understanding of when they were being observed, vanishing into the mountain wilderness with a skill that frustrated trained trackers. Some left behind family members who spoke of ancient bloodlines and gifts that skipped generations. Others simply dissolved into local folklore, becoming ghost stories that miners shared during long shifts underground. The government's interest intensified during the Cold War, when satellite imagery detected unusual electromagnetic signatures throughout Appalachia. These readings didn't match any known geological phenomena, suggesting the presence of materials or energy sources that science couldn't identify. Exploration teams found caves that extended far deeper than standard surveys indicated, containing chambers with walls that seemed to absorb sound and light in ways that violated physics. Tommy's headlamp flickered as he photographed the chamber's inscriptions, his camera's flash revealing details that darkness had concealed. The symbols weren't random decorations, but appeared to be some form of genetic mapping, depicting human figures with highlighted bloodlines that connected across generations. One particular sequence showed modifications to what looked like DNA structures, as if someone had been documenting evolutionary changes long before Watson and Crick discovered the double helix. The implications were staggering. These mountains had been producing genetic anomalies for centuries, possibly millennia. The current subject wasn't a random mutation, but part of a pattern that stretched back to the region's earliest inhabitants. Someone or something had been guiding human evolution in this isolated pocket of Appalachia, creating individuals who represented humanity's next evolutionary step. But evolution required more than time and isolation. It demanded pressure, selection, survival of traits that provided advantages in specific environments. What had these mountains been selecting for? What challenges had shaped their inhabitants into something beyond ordinary human limitations? The answer might lie in the chamber's deepest recess, where Tommy's light revealed a passage that descended further into the Earth's core. The silence broke everything. As Tommy prepared to explore the deeper passage, his radio crackled with static that resolved into an emergency transmission. Surface teams had detected movement at the abandoned facility. Security cameras showed figures moving through corridors that had been empty for weeks. The girl and Dr. Mitchell had returned, but they weren't alone. Satellite thermal imaging suggested at least a dozen individuals had gathered at the site, their heat signatures displaying the same anomalous readings that characterized the original subject. Were they planning to continue the research that official science had abandoned? Or had they come to ensure that some secrets remained buried forever in the darkness beneath the mountains? The emergency klaxon shattered the facility's silence, as motion sensors detected heat signatures moving through corridors that had been sealed for months. Security footage revealed 13 figures walking purposefully through the abandoned research complex, their movements synchronized in ways that suggested shared understanding beyond normal human communication. Among them, Dr. Mitchell and the girl moved like they owned the space, leading the group toward laboratories that contained equipment worth millions in taxpayer funding. Colonel James Harrison had overseen government containment operations across 3 decades, but the thermal readings from his surveillance team defied his experience with human physiology. Each figure registered body temperatures that fluctuated between 96 and 108 degrees Fahrenheit, cycling in patterns that matched no known biological rhythm. Their electromagnetic signatures created interference that disabled electronic equipment within a 50-foot radius, forcing his teams to rely on outdated analog monitoring systems. The group had assembled from across Appalachia, traveling along mountain paths that didn't appear on topographical surveys. Helicopter reconnaissance tracked their convergence over several days, noting how they moved through terrain that should have been impassable for ordinary humans. Some appeared to be teenagers, others showed signs of advanced age, but all exhibited the same anomalous characteristics that had made the original subject impossible to classify according to standard scientific protocols. Inside the facility, Dr. Mitchell accessed computer terminals with codes that should have been changed after her disappearance. Her clearance remained active despite official termination of her employment, suggesting someone in the government hierarchy wanted her to maintain access to classified research data. She downloaded files containing genetic sequences, cellular analysis reports, and electromagnetic field measurements that represented years of covert study into Appalachian anomalies. Thermal Analysis Report, October 27, 1987. Multiple subjects display coordinated bioelectric activity. Suggest possible telepathic or empathic connection. Recommend immediate military intervention before subjects access restricted materials. The girl who had triggered this crisis stood before a bank of monitors displaying her own test results, studying data that revealed the true scope of what she represented. Her blood contained genetic markers that didn't match any known human population, sequences that appeared to have been artificially enhanced using technology that exceeded current scientific capability. Someone had been modifying human DNA in these mountains for generations, creating individuals who possessed capabilities that bordered on supernatural. Colonel Harrison's strike team surrounded the facility as the gathering inside continued their work. Through long-range scopes, snipers observed subjects performing tasks that challenged their understanding of human limitations. One teenager appeared to be healing a companion's injuries through direct touch, cellular regeneration visible in real time. An elderly woman manipulated electronic equipment without physical contact, her proximity causing systems to activate or deactivate according to her apparent will. The most disturbing discovery came from the facility's basement laboratories, where the group had uncovered research that predated the official project timeline. Hidden archives contained documentation spanning back to 1943, revealing that government scientists had been studying Appalachian anomalies since World War II. The Manhattan Project had included a classified subdivision investigating potential biological weapons based on genetic modifications observed in mountain populations. These early experiments had failed catastrophically, producing subjects who couldn't be controlled or contained through conventional means. Military records described incidents where enhanced individuals had escaped custody by demonstrating abilities that witnesses struggled to articulate in official reports. Some subjects appeared to phase through solid barriers. Others generated electromagnetic pulses that disabled electronics. All showed regenerative capabilities that made traditional weapons ineffective for permanent neutralization. The current gathering represented a convergence of bloodlines that researchers had been tracking for decades. Genetic analysis suggested these individuals shared common ancestry that traced back to pre-Columbian inhabitants of the Appalachian region. Archaeological evidence indicated this population had possessed advanced knowledge of genetics, astronomy, and energy manipulation that mainstream science continued to dismiss as impossible for their supposed technological level. Dr. Mitchell's voice echoed through the facility's intercom system as she addressed Colonel Harrison's forces surrounding the building. Her words carried across radio frequencies that should have been encrypted, demonstrating that the group possessed capabilities that extended beyond biological enhancement. She spoke of research that could revolutionize medicine, agriculture, and energy production. She described genetic modifications that could eliminate hereditary diseases, extend human lifespan, and unlock cognitive potentials that had remained dormant for millennia. But her offer came with conditions that no government could accept. The research would remain under control of the enhanced individuals themselves. No military applications would be permitted. Most importantly, The existence of these capabilities would be revealed to the global scientific community, ending decades of classification and cover-ups that had prevented humanity from benefiting from these discoveries. They held the future hostage. Colonel Harrison's orders were explicit. Contain the anomalies by any means necessary. Preserve the research materials for government use. Ensure that no information reached public channels that might destabilize social order or challenge official scientific paradigms. His weapons were useless against subjects who could regenerate from injuries that would kill ordinary humans. His electronics failed in their presence. His authority meant nothing to individuals who existed outside the normal structures of human society. As night fell over the Allegheny Mountains, the standoff intensified with the arrival of additional enhanced individuals who emerged from the forest like they had been summoned through channels that existed beyond normal human perception. The girl at the center of it all stood silhouetted against the facility's emergency lighting, no longer appearing as the confused teenager who had been discovered in an abandoned cabin. She moved with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what she was and what she represented for humanity's future. But the government had been preparing for this possibility longer than anyone realized, and their final contingency would transform the mountains themselves into a weapon that could contain even the most extraordinary human evolution. The mountain trembled as seismic charges detonated in precise sequence beneath the Blackwood Research Facility, each explosion calculated to collapse specific tunnel networks while preserving the surface structure where 13 enhanced individuals continued their forbidden research. General Patricia Hawthorne watched satellite feeds from her command bunker in Colorado, knowing that Operation Phoenix represented the most extreme containment protocol ever authorized by the Department of Defense. If conventional weapons couldn't neutralize the anomalies, the government would bury them alive beneath millions of tons of Appalachian bedrock. The enhanced subjects detected the seismic activity immediately, their heightened senses registering vibrations that preceded the explosions by several seconds. Dr. Mitchell's voice carried across emergency frequencies as she coordinated an evacuation that defied physics and military planning alike. The group moved through the facility with supernatural efficiency, gathering research materials and personal effects, while structural supports groaned under the mounting pressure from below. Tommy Briggs felt the first shockwave while still exploring the underground chamber, his miner's instincts recognizing the distinctive signature of controlled demolition. The tunnel walls around him began to crack, releasing clouds of dust that tasted of ancient stone and something else he couldn't identify. His headlamp revealed that the mysterious inscriptions were glowing now, pulsing with the same rhythm as the explosions above. Whatever force had created these symbols was responding to the government's attempt at containment. Phoenix Protocol Implementation. October 27th, 1987, 2300 hours. Seismic charges activated in sequence alpha through gamma. Estimated time to complete structural collapse, 14 minutes. All personnel maintain safe distance, minimum 5 miles. The facility's emergency lighting failed as power systems succumbed to electromagnetic interference generated by the enhanced subjects. In the darkness, their bodies began to emit a soft bioluminescence that revealed the true extent of their modifications. Veins glowed beneath translucent skin, while their eyes reflected available light like nocturnal predators. They moved through collapsed corridors with the confidence of beings who could navigate by senses that exceeded normal human capability. General Hawthorne's strategic planners had calculated that even subjects with accelerated healing couldn't survive being crushed beneath an entire mountain. The Phoenix Protocol would eliminate the anomalies while preserving plausible deniability about their existence. Official reports would blame the facility's destruction on unstable mining conditions that finally caused catastrophic geological failure. The enhanced individuals would become just another industrial accident in Appalachia's long history of mining disasters. But the subjects weren't trying to escape through conventional routes. Satellite thermal imaging showed them descending deeper into the facility's basement levels, accessing areas that didn't appear on construction blueprints. They moved toward something that had been waiting beneath the mountain long before the government built their research complex on this specific location. The facility hadn't been constructed to study anomalies. It had been built to contain something far older and more powerful. The girl who had triggered this crisis led the group through passages that carved themselves through solid rock as she approached. The mountain itself seemed to be responding to her presence, creating pathways that connected to the tunnel network Tommy was exploring hundreds of feet below. Her companions followed without question, trusting in abilities that had been passed down through generations of Appalachian families who understood that some knowledge couldn't be contained by classification and concrete. Underground, Tommy discovered that the glowing inscriptions formed a map of the tunnel system, revealing connections that extended far beyond the abandoned mine workings. The symbols depicted energy flows that followed ley lines running through the Appalachian chain, suggesting that the enhanced individuals weren't random mutations, but products of geological forces that had been shaping human evolution for millennia. The mountain wasn't just hiding secrets, it was actively creating them. As the 7th minute of the demolition sequence elapsed, something unexpected began happening to the seismic charges themselves. Explosions that should have caused immediate structural collapse were being contained somehow, their force redirected along natural fault lines that channeled the energy away from critical support structures. The facility remained standing, while the mountain absorbed impacts that should have reduced it to rubble. The enhanced subjects had reached the chamber where Tommy waited, but they weren't surprised to find him there. The girl approached with eyes that held knowledge spanning centuries, speaking in that soft Appalachian dialect that seemed to resonate with the stone itself. She explained that people like him had always been part of the process, ordinary humans who served as witnesses to extraordinary events. His presence wasn't coincidence, but necessity for what came next. Dr. Mitchell activated equipment that shouldn't have functioned without external power, her hands manipulating controls that responded to bioelectric fields rather than mechanical pressure. The screens displayed genetic sequences that were rewriting themselves in real time, adapting to environmental pressures in ways that challenged everything science understood about mutation and evolution. The subjects weren't just enhanced humans. They were becoming something entirely new. The truth changed everything completely. As the 14th minute approached and the Phoenix Protocol should have reached completion, General Hawthorne received reports that defied her understanding of both geology and human capability. The facility remained structurally sound, while seismic sensors detected energy patterns that matched no known natural phenomena. The enhanced subjects weren't just surviving the government's ultimate containment effort. They were using it to trigger a transformation that would extend far beyond the Appalachian Mountains. The mountain itself was waking up, and humanity was about to discover that they had never been alone on Earth. The mountain's heartbeat pulsed through solid granite as ancient mechanisms activated for the first time in 10,000 years, their resonance creating harmonics that shattered laboratory equipment and sent shockwaves across 3 states. Seismographs from Virginia to Tennessee registered readings that suggested impossible geological activity beneath the Allegheny Mountains, while the enhanced subjects stood in the underground chamber watching technology that predated human civilization respond to their presence. The girl who had been classified as a genetic anomaly now revealed her true nature as something far more significant than science had dared to imagine. Dr. Mitchell's instruments detected energy signatures that shouldn't exist according to known physics, electromagnetic fields that defied measurement while somehow remaining stable enough to power systems that operated on principles beyond current understanding. The chamber walls displayed holographic projections that mapped genetic modifications spanning millennia, showing how the enhanced bloodlines had been carefully cultivated by an intelligence that understood evolution on a scale that dwarfed human scientific achievement. Tommy Briggs watched in stunned silence as the inscriptions he'd discovered transformed into active control interfaces, responding to the enhanced subject's touch with displays that revealed the mountain's true purpose. This wasn't a natural geological formation, but a vast organic computer that had been processing genetic data since before the last ice age. The mining operations that had brought his family to these mountains for generations had been unknowingly harvesting materials that served as components in this ancient biological machine. Emergency Geological Survey Report, October 28, 1987, 0130 hours. Unprecedented seismic activity detected across Appalachian Range. Energy source unknown. Recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel within 100-mile radius. The facility above had become irrelevant as the true research center revealed itself beneath the mountain. Corridors extended for miles through living rock that maintained perfect atmospheric conditions without any visible life support systems. Bioluminescent panels provided illumination that adapted to individual vision requirements, while the very air seemed to carry information that the enhanced subjects absorbed through their modified nervous systems. General Hawthorne's Phoenix Protocol had accomplished something unintended by triggering the mountain's defensive systems. The seismic charges had provided the precise energy signature needed to activate technologies that had been dormant since the last time human genetics required major intervention. The enhanced subjects weren't products of random mutation, but representatives of humanity's guided evolution, created by an intelligence that had been monitoring terrestrial development since life first emerged from the primordial oceans. The girl approached a central console that materialized from the chamber floor like it was growing from the stone itself. Her hands moved across controls that existed in dimensions beyond normal perception, accessing databases that contained the genetic history of every species that had ever inhabited Earth. The information revealed that humanity's current form represented just one phase in a planned evolutionary sequence that spanned millions of years. Dr. Mitchell documented everything, despite knowing that no scientific institution would accept her evidence. The enhanced subjects served as interfaces between human consciousness and the mountain's vast processing power, their modified genetics allowing them to access knowledge that would overwhelm unaugmented nervous systems. They learned that the Appalachian region had been chosen as an evolutionary laboratory because its isolation and geological stability provided ideal conditions for long-term genetic experimentation. The mountain began broadcasting information across electromagnetic spectrums that reached far beyond Earth's atmosphere, sending status reports to entities whose existence humanity had never suspected. The enhanced subjects weren't Earth's children achieving transcendence, but products of an intervention that had been guiding planetary development since complex life first appeared in the fossil record. Their creators weren't absent gods, but active participants in an evolutionary process that operated on cosmic timescales. Tommy realized that his family's mining operations had been part of the plan from the beginning. The materials they'd extracted hadn't been random coal deposits, but specific compounds needed to maintain the mountain's biological systems. Generations of Appalachian families had unknowingly served as caretakers for technology that required human interaction to remain functional across geological ages. The chamber's displays revealed other sites across the globe where similar interventions were occurring. Enhanced individuals had been emerging from isolated populations on every continent, their appearances coordinated to coincide with humanity's technological development reaching critical thresholds. The timing wasn't coincidental, but carefully calculated to introduce advanced capabilities just as conventional human society began facing challenges that required evolutionary solutions. But the intervention carried risks that even its architects couldn't fully control. The enhanced subjects represented genetic modifications that could spread through normal human populations under certain conditions. Their presence might trigger accelerated evolution that transformed the entire species, or it could create genetic incompatibilities that led to extinction events. The mountain systems were designed to monitor these possibilities and implement corrections as necessary. The knowledge was too vast to contain. As dawn approached over the Allegheny Mountains, satellite networks worldwide began receiving transmissions that contained genetic blueprints for technologies that could revolutionize medicine, agriculture, and energy production. The enhanced subjects weren't just accessing ancient knowledge, but broadcasting it to every facility capable of receiving and processing the information. Humanity's evolutionary graduation couldn't be stopped by government classification or military containment. The girl turned from the console with eyes that now held awareness, spanning cosmic scales. But her voice remained that soft Appalachian dialect that connected her to the mountains that had shaped her genetics. She spoke of changes coming that would challenge every assumption about humanity's place in the universe, transformations that began with individual consciousness but would eventually encompass the entire species. But first, the world would have to survive the chaos that always accompanied evolutionary leaps, and not everyone who witnessed the next phase would remain recognizably human by its conclusion. Satellite dishes across 6 continents rotated toward new coordinates as the Appalachian transmission overwhelmed conventional communication networks, their signals carrying genetic data that bypassed every encryption protocol developed by human intelligence agencies. Within 3 hours of the mountain's awakening, research facilities from Beijing to Geneva began receiving blueprints for technologies that would render current scientific paradigms obsolete, while governments scrambled to contain information that threatened to destabilize the carefully maintained boundaries between classified research and public knowledge. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the cascade from her emergency command center in Washington, watching as secure networks succumbed to data streams that operated according to principles beyond current understanding of information theory. The enhanced subjects weren't simply broadcasting knowledge, but fundamentally altering how communication systems functioned, transforming passive receivers into active participants in a global consciousness that transcended individual human awareness. Laboratory directors worldwide faced the same impossible choice as genetic modification protocols downloaded themselves directly into research databases. The information arrived complete with safety parameters and implementation guidelines, suggesting that whoever designed these systems understood human psychology well enough to prevent catastrophic misuse. But accepting the data meant acknowledging that humanity's scientific advancement had been guided by an intelligence whose existence challenged every assumption about terrestrial evolution. In Stockholm, the Karolinska Institute's Genetic Research Division discovered that their computers had been automatically reconfigured to process DNA sequences that exceeded current technological capability. Professor Lars Anderson watched his equipment analyze genetic modifications that could eliminate hereditary diseases while enhancing human cognitive and physical performance beyond anything documented in medical literature. The protocols were elegant, precise, and impossible according to established scientific principles. International Scientific Advisory Board. Emergency Session. October 28, 1987. 1400 hours. Global communication networks compromised by unknown transmission source. Genetic modification protocols of unknown origin detected in research facilities worldwide. Recommend immediate international coordination to assess security implications. The Chinese Academy of Sciences reported similar phenomena occurring simultaneously across their research network. Enhanced genetic sequences were integrating themselves into ongoing experiments, producing results that exceeded projected outcomes while maintaining perfect safety profiles. Their subjects showed no adverse reactions to modifications that should have required decades of testing and approval processes. But the most disturbing discoveries came from medical facilities treating patients with terminal genetic conditions. Emergency room physicians reported spontaneous improvements in patients who had been exposed to the transmitted data through routine diagnostic equipment. Children with muscular dystrophy began showing muscle regeneration. Adults with Huntington's disease experienced cognitive improvements that reversed years of neurological decline. The enhanced genetics weren't just theoretical knowledge, but active interventions that began healing humanity before official science could approve their implementation. Tommy Briggs emerged from the mountain complex carrying documentation that proved the enhanced subjects had been preparing for this moment for generations. Appalachian families had maintained detailed genealogical records that tracked genetic modifications across centuries, passing down knowledge that prepared them for their role as humanity's evolutionary bridge. They understood that their enhanced capabilities came with responsibility for guiding the species through transitions that could either elevate or destroy human civilization. Government response teams found themselves overwhelmed by the scope of changes occurring simultaneously across multiple continents. Military containment protocols, designed for isolated incidents, proved useless against interventions that operated through global communication networks. The enhanced subjects had effectively weaponized scientific progress, making suppression impossible without destroying the infrastructure that maintained modern civilization. Dr. Mitchell's voice appeared on emergency frequencies worldwide, explaining that the genetic modifications represented an evolutionary graduation that humanity had been unconsciously preparing for since the development of agriculture. Enhanced individuals served as proof that the modifications were compatible with human physiology, demonstrating capabilities that normal humans could achieve through controlled genetic intervention. The choice wasn't whether to accept the enhancement, but how quickly to implement it before environmental pressures made adaptation mandatory for species survival. The resistance began forming immediately as religious leaders, political authorities, and corporate interests recognized threats to established power structures. Enhanced humans who didn't require traditional resources for survival couldn't be controlled through conventional economic or social mechanisms. Their abilities made military force ineffective, while their knowledge challenged every institution that depended on maintaining information asymmetries for authority. But the mountain's transmission included more than genetic blueprints. Cultural programming designed to ease humanity's transition began influencing human consciousness through subliminal frequencies that operated below the threshold of conscious awareness. People worldwide began experiencing dreams that prepared them for enhanced capabilities while reducing psychological resistance to genetic modification. The intervention wasn't just biological, but comprehensive social engineering that addressed every aspect of human development. The enhanced subjects understood what normal humans couldn't yet grasp. The genetic modifications weren't optional upgrades, but necessary adaptations for survival in an environment that was changing faster than unenhanced human evolution could accommodate. Climate change, resource depletion, and technological complexity required capabilities that exceeded current human limitations. Enhancement wasn't transcendence, but basic survival preparation for challenges that would determine whether humanity survived the next century. Time was running out. As government forces mobilized to contain the global cascade, satellite observations detected similar awakening events, beginning at sites across 6 continents. The Appalachian intervention wasn't unique, but part of a coordinated activation that would transform human civilization whether authorities approved or not. The enhanced subjects had triggered something that couldn't be reversed, stopped, or controlled by any power that existed within current human social structures. The girl who had started everything stood in the mountain chamber, watching global communication networks carry humanity toward its evolutionary destiny, knowing that the hardest choices still lay ahead as the species discovered what it truly meant to transcend the limitations of ordinary human existence. The war room beneath Cheyenne Mountain buzzed with encrypted communications as world leaders faced a choice that would define humanity's future: accept genetic modifications that promised transcendence but threatened existing power structures, or implement the purification protocol that would eliminate enhanced individuals before their influence could spread beyond containment. President Reagan's science advisors presented models showing that within 6 months, enhanced genetics could propagate through normal human populations at rates that would make reversal impossible. The window for maintaining unmodified humanity was closing with each passing hour. Director William Casey of the Central Intelligence Agency outlined the scope of global coordination required to implement purification across 6 continents simultaneously. Enhanced individuals had integrated themselves into population centers worldwide, using their abilities to heal the sick and demonstrate capabilities that generated massive public support. Military action against them would appear as attacks on humanity's saviors, creating political chaos that hostile nations could exploit during the implementation phase. The enhanced subjects anticipated this response, having accessed classified government databases through methods that bypassed every security protocol designed to protect sensitive information. They understood that fear of losing control would drive authorities toward genocide disguised as necessary containment. Their strategy involved forcing governments to choose between wholesale slaughter of innocents or acceptance of evolutionary change that couldn't be reversed through conventional warfare. Dr. Vasquez received intelligence reports from field teams worldwide describing enhanced individuals who had begun manifesting abilities that exceeded even the Appalachian subjects' documented capabilities. A 12-year-old girl in Mumbai demonstrated cellular regeneration that could regrow severed limbs within hours. An elderly man in Sao Paulo showed cognitive enhancement that allowed him to solve mathematical problems that had challenged university professors for decades. Each case followed the same pattern of gradual revelation that built public trust before authorities could implement containment. Joint Chiefs Strategic Assessment, October 30th, 1987. Enhanced individuals demonstrate capabilities that render conventional military response ineffective. Recommend implementation of purification protocol before subjects achieve critical mass in major population centers. The moral calculus became increasingly complex as enhanced subjects began using their abilities for humanitarian purposes that generated international media attention. Children with terminal cancer experienced miraculous recoveries after contact with enhanced individuals. Agricultural regions affected by drought showed unprecedented crop yields following visits from subjects who could somehow optimize soil conditions through direct interaction. The enhanced weren't positioning themselves as threats, but as humanity's potential salvation from problems that conventional science couldn't solve. But intelligence analysts identified patterns suggesting the humanitarian activities served strategic purposes beyond altruistic motivation. Enhanced subjects were mapping global infrastructure, identifying critical systems, and establishing relationships with key political and scientific leaders. Their healing demonstrations created psychological dependence that made populations resistant to government warnings about potential dangers posed by genetic modification. They were conducting an influence campaign that made military response politically impossible, while advancing goals that remained unclear to unenhanced human observers. The girl from Appalachia appeared simultaneously in multiple locations worldwide, her image broadcast through communication networks that operated according to principles beyond current technological understanding. She spoke in dozens of languages with perfect fluency, addressing concerns about genetic modification while demonstrating capabilities that made resistance seem futile. Her message remained consistent across cultures. Humanity faced environmental and social challenges that required enhanced capabilities for survival. Evolution could occur gradually through voluntary modification, or rapidly through crisis-driven adaptation. But change itself was inevitable. Tommy Briggs discovered that his role extended beyond witnessing to active participation in humanity's transition. The mountain systems had been monitoring his genetic profile since birth, identifying characteristics that made him suitable for enhancement without the generational preparation required for other subjects. His mining background provided practical knowledge about geological systems that the enhanced needed for managing global-scale environmental modifications. He could choose immediate enhancement or remain unmodified as a bridge between enhanced and normal human populations. Military strategists recognized that purification would require targeting civilian populations that harbored enhanced individuals, creating humanitarian disasters that would destabilize international relations for generations. Enhanced subjects had deliberately integrated themselves into schools, hospitals, and religious institutions where military action would cause massive collateral damage. Their strategy forced authorities to choose between accepting genetic modification or becoming responsible for genocidal policies that would destroy the moral authority necessary for maintaining social order. The resistance movements that formed in response to enhancement carried their own dangers for human survival. Religious extremists declared enhanced individuals demonic, launching terrorist attacks that killed both enhanced and normal humans indiscriminately. Corporate interests funded political campaigns, demanding government protection of pure human genetics, creating social divisions that enhanced subjects could exploit to accelerate the breakdown of existing institutions. Fear of enhancement was proving more destructive than enhancement itself. Dr. Mitchell's final transmission from the Appalachian facility provided coordinates for sites worldwide where humanity could access enhancement technologies safely. The offer came with a deadline. Governments had 72 hours to choose cooperation or face intervention by enhanced subjects who possessed capabilities that exceeded anything demonstrated publicly. The choice wasn't whether to accept genetic modification, but whether to manage it through collaboration or suffer the consequences of resistance. The countdown had begun as enhanced individuals worldwide began revealing abilities that made conventional weapons useless against them. Military commanders realized that purification protocol success depended on speed and surprise that were no longer achievable. The enhanced had anticipated every containment strategy, positioning themselves beyond the reach of government force, while maintaining the moral authority that made public support for military action impossible. Humanity would evolve whether authorities approved or not. The only question remaining was whether the species would survive the transition intact or fragment into enhanced and unenhanced populations that would compete for resources in a world that no longer operated according to the rules that had governed human civilization since the beginning of recorded history. The 72-hour deadline expired at precisely noon Eastern Standard Time on November 2, 1987, as enhanced individuals worldwide began demonstrating capabilities that transformed the fundamental nature of human existence on Earth. Government facilities across 6 continents lost power simultaneously. While enhanced subjects appeared in major population centers, their presence triggering biological changes in normal humans that couldn't be reversed through any known medical intervention. The purification protocol became irrelevant as humanity discovered that evolution had already chosen their path forward, whether they accepted it willingly or fought against changes that had become inevitable the moment the mountain awakened beneath Appalachia. Dr. Vasquez watched from her bunker as satellite feeds showed enhanced individuals walking through military checkpoints without resistance, their presence causing weapons to malfunction, while simultaneously healing soldiers who suffered from combat injuries and psychological trauma. The display of power wasn't aggressive, but demonstrated control over physical reality that made opposition pointless. They offered healing, knowledge, and capabilities that exceeded humanity's greatest achievements, asking only for acceptance of genetic modifications that would allow normal humans to share in enhanced existence. Tommy Briggs made his choice in the underground chamber where this transformation had begun, accepting enhancement that connected his consciousness to systems spanning the globe while maintaining his essential humanity. The modification process felt like remembering knowledge he'd always possessed, genetic potential that had been dormant until activated by exposure to technologies that predated human civilization. His enhanced awareness revealed that every human carried the genetic foundation for these capabilities, requiring only the proper catalyst to unlock evolutionary potential that had been deliberately suppressed for millennia. The global transformation proceeded with precision that suggested planning across geological timescales. Enhanced individuals appeared exactly where their capabilities were most needed, addressing crises that conventional human technology couldn't resolve. They cleaned radiation from contaminated environments, restored degraded ecosystems, and provided medical treatments that eliminated diseases that had plagued humanity since the dawn of civilization. Their demonstrations proved that enhancement offered solutions to every major challenge facing human survival in the 21st century. Presidential Emergency Briefing, November 2nd, 1987, 1800 hours. Enhanced individuals demonstrate complete control over fundamental physical processes. Military resistance ineffective. Recommend immediate diplomatic engagement to negotiate terms for species transition. Religious leaders worldwide struggled to interpret events that challenged every theological framework developed by human civilization. Some declared the enhanced subjects divine messengers, offering humanity redemption from original sin. Others proclaimed them demonic entities, testing human faith through temptations that would corrupt the soul. The enhanced addressed these concerns by demonstrating that their capabilities operated through natural processes that expanded rather than replaced existing religious understanding. They weren't replacing God, but revealing the divine potential that existed within human genetics. Corporate and government authorities discovered that enhanced individuals had anticipated every strategy for maintaining existing power structures during the transition period. Financial systems that depended on scarcity became irrelevant when enhanced subjects could manipulate matter and energy directly. Military hierarchies lost meaning when enhanced soldiers possessed capabilities that made traditional warfare obsolete. Political control became impossible when enhanced citizens could access information and resources that eliminated dependence on centralized institutions. But the enhanced offered partnership rather than conquest, recognizing that sudden social collapse would cause unnecessary suffering during humanity's evolutionary transition. They proposed gradual transformation that preserved beneficial aspects of existing civilization while eliminating structures that prevented optimal human development. The process would take generations, allowing unenhanced humans to adapt psychologically while enhanced individuals managed the technical challenges of species-wide genetic modification. The girl from Appalachia addressed the United Nations General Assembly through communication networks that reached every human settlement on Earth simultaneously. Her words carried frequencies that bypassed language barriers, speaking directly to consciousness in ways that transcended cultural differences. She explained that humanity had reached an evolutionary crossroads where enhancement was necessary for survival in an environment that was changing faster than unenhanced biology could accommodate. The choice wasn't whether to evolve, but how quickly to accept changes that had already begun. Tommy emerged from the mountains, carrying memories that spanned millions of years, understanding that human civilization represented just one phase in a developmental sequence that would eventually encompass the entire galaxy. The enhanced weren't Earth's final evolution, but preparation for challenges that awaited humanity among the stars. Their capabilities would be required for interstellar travel, terraforming alien worlds, and establishing sustainable civilizations across distances that made conventional human lifespan inadequate for exploration goals. The transformation wasn't ending, but beginning, as enhanced individuals prepared humanity for expansions that would carry terrestrial consciousness beyond the limitations of planetary existence. The mountain had awakened not just to modify human genetics, but to launch the species toward destinies that required capabilities beyond anything imagined by unenhanced scientific understanding. The silence held infinite possibilities, but even now, decades later, some claim that deep in the Appalachian hollows, voices can still be heard singing, ancient melodies that carry frequencies capable of triggering genetic modifications in anyone brave enough to listen closely. They say the mountain continues its work, patiently waiting for humanity to fully embrace the evolutionary potential that was always hidden within our DNA, transforming one consciousness at a time until the entire species remembers what we were truly meant to become. We're only scratching the surface. The next case is even darker. Subscribe before it drops.